Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Sometimes the smallest decisions change everything. If I hadn't gone home that Tuesday afternoon, I might still be living a lie and probably still be married to someone who was cheating on me in my own house. My name is Nathan, and this is how a work presentation I almost missed ended up saving me from a marriage built on deception. When I met Carla, she had just gotten out of what she later described as a messy relationship. Her ex had been controlling and emotionally abusive, the kind of guy who made her question her own judgment and worth. He'd isolated her from friends, criticized her career goals, and made her feel like she wasn't capable of making good decisions about her own life. The relationship had lasted almost 3 years, and by the time Carla finally found the strength to leave, she was emotionally exhausted and deeply suspicious of men's motives. She'd moved back in with her parents temporarily while she rebuilt her graphic design business and tried to piece her confidence back together. When we started talking, I could tell Carla's mind was completely closed off to the idea of getting involved with someone new. She'd put up walls that seemed impossible to break through, and every interaction felt like she was waiting for me to reveal some hidden agenda or controlling behavior. When I asked for her number after our first conversation, Carla said she wasn't interested in dating anyone and needed to focus on herself. When I suggested we meet for coffee again as friends, she explained that she was still healing from her past relationship and didn't want any complications in her life. But something about Carla made me want to prove that not all men were like her ex. I wasn't pushy or aggressive about pursuing her. I just consistently showed her through my actions that I was different from what she'd experienced before. I'd stop by a coffee shop she usually frequents when I knew she'd be there, asking about her work projects without expecting anything in return. While she was guarded, she did talk to me. I'd listen when Carla talked about her struggles with rebuilding her business and dealing with difficult clients, offering encouragement without trying to fix her problems or give unsolicited advice. I made it clear that I respected her independence and had no interest in controlling or changing her. She gave me her number and we kept in touch. Gradually, over the course of several months, Carla started to see the good in me and began to accept that I wasn't in her life to hurt her like her ex had done. She started opening up about her past, sharing stories about her childhood, her dreams for her design business, and her fears about trusting someone again. The walls Carla had built around her heart started coming down piece by piece as she realized I was genuinely interested in knowing her as a person, not in molding her into what I wanted her to be. She began to believe that I cared about her happiness and success rather than just what she could do for me. We soon began dating after Carla finally opened up to me completely. It took about 4 months of patient friendship before she was ready to give our relationship a real chance, but the wait was absolutely worth it. When she finally let me in emotionally, it felt like I'd won the lottery. Carla was everything I wanted in a woman: intelligent, creative, independent, and beautiful in a way that took my breath away every time I looked at her. She was working hard, and I admired her determination, talent, and resilience after everything she'd been through. I believed I was her type, too, based on how she'd talk about our future with genuine excitement and hope. Carla would tell me that I made her feel safe and valued in ways she'd never experienced before, and that our relationship had shown her what healthy love actually looked like. After a year of dating and getting to know each other deeply, with both our parents' blessings and encouragement, we got married in a small ceremony. The timing felt perfect, not too rushed, but not so long that we were just going through the motions of a relationship that had run its course. Carla had clearly healed from her past relationship trauma and was ready to build something real with someone she could trust completely. I was ready to commit my life to someone who I thought shared my values about loyalty, honesty, and partnership in marriage. To me, Carla was my ride or die. She was the person I wanted to share everything with: good news from work, bad days when nothing went right, random thoughts that popped into my head, and big dreams about our future together. I couldn't imagine my life without her, and I genuinely thought she felt the same way about me. I managed to balance my work as a marketing analyst with coming home to Carla on time every evening. I was good at my job and respected by my colleagues, but I never let work take priority over my marriage. I'd be home by 6 p.m. most nights, and we'd cook dinner together, watch movies, and talk about our days. For the first 3 years of our marriage, everything seemed ideal. We had our routines and plans to start a family in a few years. To me, what we were building was supposed to last forever. Then came one Tuesday afternoon that shattered my entire world and showed me who my wife really was. That day started normally. I was in the middle of preparing for an important presentation to potential clients that afternoon, a project that could bring in significant revenue for our company. I'd spent weeks putting together the proposal, creating detailed charts and projections that I'd saved on my personal flash drive. Around 1 p.m., as I was getting ready to head to the conference room for the 3 p.m. meeting, I realized that my flash drive wasn't in my laptop bag, where I always kept it. I checked my desk drawers, my briefcase, and every pocket of my jacket, but it was nowhere to be found in my office. Then I remembered that I'd been working on the presentation at home the night before, making some last-minute adjustments. I must have left the flash drive plugged into my home office computer when I went to bed. I didn't think it was necessary to call Carla to let her know I was coming home, since I wouldn't be spending any time at the house. My plan was simple: drive home, grab the flash drive from my computer, and get back to the office in time for the meeting. The whole trip should take maybe 40 minutes, and I would be back early enough before the meeting. I got in my car and drove the familiar route to our house, thinking about the presentation and hoping the clients would be interested in our proposal. I wasn't worried about anything other than making sure I had all my materials ready and that the meeting would go smoothly. When I pulled onto our street, I saw a car I didn't recognize parked directly in front of our house. It was a black SUV that definitely didn't belong to anyone I know. Instead of pulling into our driveway like I normally would, I parked a bit further down the house, wondering who might be visiting Carla. I walked up to our front door, fishing my keys out of my pocket and not thinking about anything other than the possibility that Carla might have someone over for lunch. She sometimes had people over during the day for work meetings or social visits. I unlocked the front door and walked into our living room, and immediately saw something that made my whole world pause. It made no sense to my brain at first. Carla was making out on our sofa with a man I'd never seen before, with their clothes scattered around the floor in different directions. I stood there frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a business meeting or a friendly visit. My wife was having an affair with a stranger in our house, on the furniture we'd picked out together, in the space where we'd built our life as a married couple. I was heartbroken, devastated, and completely unable to believe what was happening in front of me. The woman I'd spent months convincing to trust me, who I'd married and promised to love forever, was betraying everything we'd built together with someone I'd never even seen before. When Carla and her affair partner finally noticed me standing there, they broke apart abruptly and jumped up from the sofa. The man started scrambling to put his shirt back on while Carla grabbed her clothes and tried to cover herself, both of them looking shocked and panicked at being caught. Carla immediately started pleading that it was all a mistake, that she hadn't planned for this to happen, and that she could explain everything if I'd just give her a chance. But I couldn't say anything in response. My throat felt like it was closed, and my mind was completely blank except for the image of what I'd just witnessed. I walked straight into my home office while Carla followed behind me, probably unsure of what I was planning to do or get. I unplugged the flash drive from my computer, put it in my pocket, and walked back out of the house to my car without saying a single word to either of them. For the rest of that day at the office, I wasn't myself at all. I felt like I was moving through thick fog, trying to function normally, while my mind kept replaying the scene I'd walked in on. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Carla kissing that stranger on our sofa. I managed not to mess up the presentation with my emotional state, but it was obvious to everyone in the room that something was seriously wrong with me. I got through the meeting on autopilot, giving answers to questions and showing the charts I'd prepared, but my heart wasn't in it at all. My boss was in the meeting and kept giving me concerned looks throughout the presentation. I was afraid he might confront me afterward about my performance or ask what was distracting me, but he didn't say anything when the clients left the conference room. When it was time for me to close for the day, which I usually did around 6 p.m. so I could get home to Carla, I couldn't find any strength to leave the office. Instead of packing up and heading home, I kept working on tasks that I normally would leave until the next day. I was going through emails, organizing files, and working on projects that weren't urgent, anything to avoid having to go home and face Carla and whatever conversation was waiting for me there. Even though I couldn't concentrate on anything properly, I kept forcing myself to stay busy. I didn't know how late it had gotten until my boss came by my desk when he was closing for the day. Most of the office was empty by then, and I was still sitting there staring at my computer screen, going through the same task over and over without really accomplishing anything meaningful. He looked at me with genuine concern and said, "Nathan, come with me." He didn't ask if I wanted to leave or if I had plans. He just told me to pack up my things and follow him. I shut down my computer, grabbed my jacket, and walked out to the parking lot with him. We got in our separate cars, and he led me to a quiet bar about 10 minutes from our office. It was the kind of place where you could have a real conversation without being interrupted by loud music or crowds of people. We found a table in the back corner and ordered drinks. My boss looked at me across the table and asked directly what was wrong, because he'd noticed that my behavior had completely changed from what it was in the morning to something totally different in the afternoon. He said it was obvious that something significant had happened, and he wanted to know if there was anything he could do to help. I completely broke down and told him everything. How I'd gone home to get my flash drive and found my wife, Carla, with another man, how they'd been making out on our sofa with their clothes scattered around, and how she'd pleaded that it was all a mistake when they got caught. I explained how much I loved Carla and had cared for her throughout our entire relationship, how I'd spent months convincing her to trust me after her abusive ex, and how I'd thought we had something real and permanent. The betrayal felt like it was destroying everything I believed about our marriage and my judgment of people. My boss listened to everything I said without interrupting me or trying to offer quick solutions. He just let me pour out all my pain and confusion while he sat there patiently, occasionally nodding to show he was following what I was telling him. After I was done explaining the whole situation and had gotten all my emotions out, he asked me what I planned to do next. Did I want to try to work things out with Carla? Was I thinking about divorce? Had I decided anything about how to handle this situation? I was shocked at how direct the question came. I told him honestly that I didn't know what to do. I felt completely lost and couldn't think clearly about anything beyond the image of walking in on my wife with another man. I hadn't been able to process the situation enough to make any decisions about my marriage or my future. My boss reminded me that no matter what happened with Carla or how this situation was resolved, I was the one in charge of my own life. I could allow what I'd seen to completely destroy me and define my future, or I could decide on the next line of action and stick with it, regardless of how difficult it might be. Then he told me about his own experience with betrayal. He said he hadn't been married in his situation, but there had been a woman he was completely devoted to who had also cheated on him. He'd planned to propose to her and had thought they were building toward marriage and a family together. When I asked him if that betrayal was the reason he'd never officially gotten married, he nodded and said yes. He explained that he'd never been able to get beyond that betrayal and had never trusted anyone enough since then to make that kind of commitment again. My boss, however, told me he wasn't asking me to be like him or make the same choices he'd made. But he wanted me to understand that the power to move forward with my life or stay stuck in this painful place was completely in my hands. I could choose to let this define me, or I could choose to take control and decide what came next. We sat there for another hour, having a few drinks and talking about life, relationships, and the difficulty of trusting people when they've shown you they're capable of betraying that trust. He shared more about his own experience and how it had shaped his approach to relationships over the years. When we finally ended the night and went to our separate cars, I felt grateful to have a boss who cared enough about me as a person to spend his evening helping me process one of the worst days of my life. His perspective and advice had given me some clarity about my situation. When I got home that night, Carla was waiting for me in the living room with a prepared speech about how the affair was a mistake, how it had been an unplanned situation that got out of hand, and how she wanted to work on our marriage and rebuild my trust. She explained that the man I'd caught her with was a personal trainer from her gym who had been helping her with her fitness goals. According to Carla, they developed a friendship that had gradually become inappropriate. And that afternoon was the first time anything physical had happened between them. Carla insisted that she loved me and didn't want to lose our marriage over what she called a moment of weakness and poor judgment. She said she was willing to do whatever it took to repair the damage and prove that she was committed to being faithful going forward. But I had absolutely nothing to say to her in response. I couldn't find any words that seemed adequate for the situation, and I didn't trust myself to speak without saying things that would make the situation even worse than it already was. From that night forward, and for the next couple of days, I completely ignored Carla while I contacted a divorce attorney and got the legal process started. I didn't respond to her attempts at conversation, didn't acknowledge her apologies or explanations, and didn't engage with her efforts to discuss our future. I slept in the guest room, left for work early, came home late, and generally acted like Carla didn't exist in my life anymore because, to be honest, she didn't. I needed time to process what had happened and make decisions about my marriage without being influenced by her emotional appeals or promises to change. The divorce case eventually got to court, and we got legally divorced within a few months. The process was relatively straightforward since we didn't have children together and hadn't accumulated many major assets during our short marriage. Carla didn't contest the divorce or try to drag out the proceedings. Throughout the entire legal process, I felt like there was absolutely no way I could forgive Carla for having an intimate relationship with another man in our house, on our furniture, in the space where we'd built our life together. The betrayal felt too fundamental and too disrespectful to overcome. The image of seeing Carla with another man on our sofa haunted me constantly until the divorce was completed and I could start moving forward with my life. I couldn't stop thinking about how long the affair had been going on, how many times they'd been together in our house, and how naive I'd been about what was happening. Looking back on everything now, I still believe in love and the possibility of finding someone trustworthy to build a life with. But I'll never again be with a woman who would cheat on me in my own house and then claim it was just a mistake that didn't mean anything. My boss's advice that night at the bar probably saved me from making the mistake of trying to reconcile with someone who had shown me exactly who she was when she thought I wouldn't find out. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, and some people show you through their actions that they're not worthy of your trust. I'm grateful for that forgotten flash drive, as strange as that sounds. If I hadn't needed to go home that afternoon, I might have continued living in a marriage built on lies for months or years longer. Sometimes the worst day of your life is also the day that saves you from wasting more time on the wrong person. The whole experience taught me that actions reveal character in ways that words never can. Carla could apologize and make promises about changing, but what she did that afternoon showed me who she really was when she thought no one was watching. That's the person I would have been married to, not the person she pretended to be when I was around. Today, I'm rebuilding my life with a much clearer understanding of what I will and won't accept in a relationship. I'm not bitter or closed off to love, but I'm definitely more careful about trusting people and more aware of red flags that I might have ignored before. My boss and I still work together, and occasionally we'll grab drinks after work and talk about life. He's become more than just my boss. He's a mentor and friend who helped me through one of the most difficult periods of my life. I'll always be grateful for his wisdom and support during those dark days. The lesson I learned is simple. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Carla showed me that she was capable of betraying the person who loved her most in the place that was supposed to be sacred to our marriage. That told me everything I needed to know about our future together. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering the truth about someone before you waste any more years building a life with them. My marriage to Carla was short, but it taught me valuable lessons about trust, respect, and the importance of choosing partners who share your values about loyalty and commitment. I'm in a better place now than I was during those confusing months when I was trying to make sense of Carla's betrayal. Time and distance have given me perspective on the situation and confidence that I made the right decision to end things quickly rather than trying to rebuild trust that had been fundamentally broken. The flash drive incident changed my life in ways I never could have predicted, but ultimately it led me away from a marriage that was built on deception and toward a future where I can find someone who actually deserves the love and commitment I have to offer. Hello everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Jamie. When my fiancée staged a breakup in front of her friends, she had no idea how I would respond. My fiancée, Vanessa, and I met during our last year at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. By the time we graduated, we'd already gone out for coffee twice. We began dating months after graduation. I began working in a mid-sized healthcare company. The pay was decent and the benefits were solid. Vanessa went into retail management. She got hired as an assistant manager at a clothing store downtown that catered to young professionals. She worked long hours and dealt with difficult customers. She complained about it sometimes, about entitled shoppers, about unrealistic sales targets, about how her feet hurt from standing all day, but she seemed reasonably content. She was good at what she did. Within a year, she got promoted to store manager. Our relationship settled into a comfortable rhythm. We talked about moving in together, but decided to hold on for a while. We did a lot of things together and talked about the future in general terms at first. As we approached our 4th anniversary, those conversations became more concrete. I started thinking seriously about proposing. I'd always imagined that when the time came, I'd know. And I did. I woke up one Sunday morning, saw Vanessa, who came over for the weekend, making coffee in the kitchen, and thought to myself that I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I started planning shortly after that. The first thing I did was research engagement rings. I knew nothing about diamonds or jewelry. I spent hours reading articles, watching YouTube videos, and learning about the 4 Cs: cut, clarity, color, and carat. I set a budget of $1,000. That felt reasonable given my salary and savings. I didn't want to go into debt for a ring. I visited 3 different jewelers over the course of 2 weeks. I asked questions and compared options. I tried to find something that balanced quality, appearance, and price. Eventually, I settled on something. The jeweler assured me it was genuine and well-made. He said the size was very typical for engagements in my price range. I trusted him. I felt good about the choice. The next step was planning the actual proposal. Vanessa had always told me she didn't want anything overly public or showy. She valued intimacy over spectacle. So I planned something private and meaningful. I made a reservation at a restaurant with a rooftop dining area. The rooftop overlooked the city skyline and was strung with soft Edison bulbs. I requested a corner table, asked for minimal interruption from the waitstaff, and confirmed they could help coordinate the timing of the proposal without making it a big production. The evening itself was perfect. We had dinner. She ordered the salmon, I got the ribeye, and we talked and laughed like we always did. I was nervous, but I didn't think she noticed. After dessert, I stood up, moved beside her, and got down on one knee. Her hands went to her mouth immediately. Her eyes widened. I kept it simple. I told her I loved her, that I couldn't imagine my life without her, and that I wanted to spend the rest of my life making her happy. I asked if she would marry me. She said yes before I even finished opening the ring box. She pulled me up and kissed me. The few other couples on the rooftop clapped. It felt surreal and perfect. She looked at the ring under the lights, turning her hand to see how it caught the glow. She told me it was beautiful. She hugged me again, tighter this time. Then, almost immediately, she pulled out her phone. She took photos of the ring on her hand from multiple angles. She texted her friends. She snapped a selfie of the two of us with the ring visible in the frame. I didn't mind. I understood she was excited and wanted to share the moment. We stayed on the rooftop for another hour, just talking and taking all in. When we finally left, she was still glowing. The next morning, she posted a photo on Instagram. It was a simple shot, her hand resting on a table, the ring in focus. The caption read, "Forever starts now." Within an hour, the post had over 200 likes. The comments section filled up with congratulations from friends, family, and acquaintances. Everyone seemed genuinely happy for us. For the first few days after the proposal, everything felt right. Vanessa wore the ring constantly. She'd glance at it throughout the day, smiling. She talked about wedding ideas, nothing concrete, just general thoughts about venues and guest lists, and whether we do a big ceremony or something smaller. I felt relieved. She accepted me wholly. But then, about 5 days after the proposal, something shifted. Vanessa had spent the afternoon with 2 of her close friends. They'd gone out for brunch and then spent a few hours at one of the friends' apartments. Vanessa came to my place around 6 that evening. She seemed quieter than usual, less bubbly. When I asked how her day was, she said it was fine, but her tone was flat. Later that night, while we were sitting on the couch watching TV, she brought up the ring. She asked, casually at first, how much I'd spent on it. I told her. There was a pause. Then she asked why I hadn't gone bigger. She said she'd been looking at engagement rings online with her friends and noticed that a lot of them were over a carat. Some were a carat and a half. She asked if I'd considered something in that range. I explained that I'd chosen the ring based on overall quality, not just size. I also mentioned that I'd worked within a budget that made sense for where we were financially. I wasn't apologetic, but I wasn't defensive either. I just explained my reasoning. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't satisfied. She didn't say anything else about it that night, but the conversation left a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. Over the next week, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She began responding to my text messages later than usual, sometimes 2 or 3 hours later. Her replies were shorter and less engaged. She started posting things on social media that felt pointed. One of the captions read, "Never settle for anything less than you deserve." These weren't the kinds of things she usually posted. Her Instagram had always been casual. This new tone felt different. It felt like a message, even if it wasn't explicitly directed at anyone. I didn't confront her about it. I didn't ask what the post meant or why she was being distant. I just observed while being calm. But internally, I felt uneasy. I could sense her pulling away, and I had a growing suspicion that her friends had said something to her that had shifted her perspective. 2 weeks after the proposal, she sent me a text one evening while I was still at work. It read, "Can you come to the cafe near my place? We need to talk." My stomach dropped when I saw it. "We need to talk" is universally recognized as a precursor to something bad. But I didn't let myself spiral into worst-case scenarios. I replied that I'd be there in 20 minutes. I left work a little early, got in my car, and drove to the small cafe near her apartment that she'd mentioned. It was a place we'd been to a handful of times before. When I walked in, I spotted Vanessa immediately. She was sitting at a table near the large front window with some of her friends. The 3 of them had drinks in front of them already. They were relaxed and casual, like they'd been there for a while. The moment I approached the table, the mood shifted. Vanessa's smile faded. The friends were quiet, but didn't leave. They stayed seated, settling back into their chairs like they were audience members about to watch a performance. I realized pretty quickly that this wasn't a coincidence. They were here intentionally. This was staged. I pulled out the empty chair across from Vanessa and sat down. No one said anything for a moment. I asked if anyone wanted me to grab them anything from a counter, trying to break the tension. Vanessa shook her head. I went to the counter and ordered a black coffee. When I came back to the table, the silence was even heavier. Vanessa started with small talk. She asked how work was. I said it was fine. She asked if I was tired. I said a little. The conversation felt forced and awkward, like we were strangers making obligatory pleasantries. Then, after some minutes of this, she straightened in her seat, folded her hands on the table, and her tone became serious. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking over the past couple of weeks. She said that maybe things between us had moved too fast, that maybe we'd rushed into the engagement without really being sure, that she wasn't certain this was working the way it should. I didn't interrupt. I just listened, keeping my face neutral, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup. She continued. She said she cared about me, but that she didn't know if we were aligned with each other. She said she needed to be honest about her feelings. Then she reached up and slowly pulled the engagement ring off her finger. She placed it on the table between us, right next to the sugar packets. She looked at me and said, "You're a good guy, but this ring doesn't even look real and befitting to me. I can't wear this." I heard a muffled giggle from one of her friends. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the other holding her phone, angled slightly toward us. She was recording. For a moment, I just sat there. Not because I was shocked or hurt. I'd already suspected something like this was coming based on how she'd been acting. But because I wanted to make absolutely sure I didn't react the way they were expecting me to. They wanted a scene. They wanted me to get defensive, to argue, to beg, to make this into a dramatic moment they could dissect and share later. I wasn't going to give them that. Instead, I took a slow breath, looked down at the ring on the table. Then I looked back up at Vanessa. I gave a small, calm smile. Then I reached across the table, picked up the ring, and slipped it into my pocket. I said quietly and evenly, "Done. Enjoy your freedom." Then I stood up, walked over to the counter, pulled out my wallet, and paid for my coffee. The barista asked if everything was okay. I said it was fine and thanked her. Then I walked out the door. I didn't look back. I didn't say anything else. I just left. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair and one of her friends' voices, confused and slightly panicked. "Wait, is he seriously just walking out?" I got in my car, started the engine, and drove home. The entire drive, I felt numb. When I got back to my apartment, I sat on the couch in silence for a long time, staring at nothing in particular. The next few days were quiet. I didn't text Vanessa. I didn't call. I didn't check her social media. I went completely silent. I blocked her friends on Instagram and Facebook. I didn't need to see whatever narrative they were constructing or how they were framing what had happened. My new activity consists of going to work, coming home, and going to the gym. I kept myself busy with routine and structure. 2 days after the cafe incident, I took the ring back to the jeweler. I walked in with a small black box in my jacket pocket. The same man who'd sold it to me was behind the counter. He recognized me immediately. I told him, briefly and without unnecessary detail, that the engagement had ended and that I wanted to return the ring. He was understanding. He didn't ask for the full story. He inspected the ring to make sure it was in the same condition I'd purchased it in, which it was. He explained that their return policy included a 15% restocking fee, which I'd agreed to when I bought it. He processed the return and handed me a check. I'd lost a couple of dollars, but I didn't care. Keeping the ring would have been worse. I thanked him and left. I didn't tell Vanessa I'd returned it. She didn't need to know, and I didn't owe her an explanation. For the first few days after the cafe meeting, I think Vanessa expected me to reach out, to try to talk things through, to fight for the relationship. When I didn't, the silence must have started to feel heavier than she anticipated. About 5 days in, she posted a photo on Instagram. It was a picture of her and a friend of hers at some trendy brunch spot, mimosas in hand, both smiling. The caption read, "Moving forward and living my best life." I didn't react. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. I didn't even look at it for more than a second. A week after the cafe incident, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. It read, "Hey, when are we going to the jeweler? I didn't mean to offend you." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed a reply, "There's no jeweler. It's over. I already took the ring back for a refund." I hit send and set my phone down to continue what I was doing. Within 3 minutes, my phone started ringing. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. She called again, then again, for times in the span of 10 minutes. I let every call go to voicemail. Then the voice notes started coming in. The first one was 2 minutes long. She said she didn't understand why I was being like this. She said we needed to talk because I was overreacting. The second one was longer, and it came hours later when I didn't reply to the last one. She apologized. She said she'd been overwhelmed and confused. She said her friends had gotten into her head and made her doubt things she shouldn't have doubted. She said she still loved me, and that we could fix this if I'd just talk to her. The third voice note was almost 3 minutes long, and came the next day. She was crying. She said she'd made a mistake. She said the ring comment was stupid, and that she didn't mean it the way it came out. She said she wanted to work through this, that relationships go through hard moments, and that giving up wasn't the answer. I listened to the first few seconds of each one, then skipped ahead or deleted them. The text messages came next. Long paragraphs. Apologies and explanations. Promises that things would be different. Pleads for me to meet with her so we can talk face to face. I didn't respond to any of it. After 3 days of silence from me, I heard through a mutual friend that Vanessa had been asking about me. When friends asked about the breakup, I kept it simple. We weren't compatible, it didn't work out, and I was fine. Most people didn't push for details. But over time, a few who knew both of us found out what had happened. Word travels in circles of mutual friends, especially when something dramatic goes down in a public place with witnesses. The general reaction wasn't in Vanessa's favor. I would find out that a couple of people had called Vanessa out for being shallow. Someone else said she'd thrown away a solid relationship over something materialistic. Another mutual friend reached out to me directly, saying he respected how I'd handled the situation and that walking away with dignity was the right move. I appreciated the support, but I didn't dwell on it. I wasn't interested in turning this into a public referendum on who was right and who was wrong. Around this same time, I noticed that one of Vanessa's friends had unfollowed Vanessa on Instagram. I have no idea what happened between them, but I wasn't surprised. Friendships built on shallow validation and drama don't tend to last when the novelty wears off. In the weeks and months following the breakup, I focused entirely on myself. I threw myself into my work. I took on additional projects at my job, volunteered to help with any task available, and made myself indispensable to my team. About 4 months after the breakup, I was promoted. It came with a raise and more responsibility. I accepted immediately. I felt lighter. Not because I was glad the relationship had ended. I genuinely cared about Vanessa and had pictured a future with her. But because I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's doubts and judgments anymore. Every now and then, Vanessa would try to reach out to me, but I kept telling her that I've moved on. I'd hear through my own friends that Vanessa was still asking about me. I never felt tempted to reach back out. I'd said everything I needed to say when I walked out of that cafe. There was nothing left to discuss. Looking back now, I think the hardest part of the whole experience wasn't the breakup itself. Breakups happen. People grow apart, realize they're not compatible, and move on. That's life. The hard part was realizing that the person I thought I knew, someone I'd spent for years with, someone I'd supported through difficult times, someone I'd planned a future with, had been so easily swayed by outside voices. The ring wasn't the problem. The price wasn't the problem. The problem was that Vanessa had allowed her friends to convince her that my effort, my thoughtfulness, and my love weren't enough. That I wasn't enough. And once someone decides that no amount of explaining, defending, or proving will change their mind, I'm not angry at her. I don't wish anything bad for her. But I'm also not interested in revisiting something that was clearly built on a foundation that wasn't as solid as I thought. Sometimes people test you without even realizing they're doing it. They push boundaries to see how you'll react, how much you'll bend, how far you'll go to keep them happy. And sometimes, the best response is no response at all. Walking away doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're refusing to participate in a situation where the outcome is already rigged against you. Silence isn't weakness. It's clarity. It's self-respect. When Vanessa took off that ring and told me it wasn't good enough, she wasn't just criticizing the ring. She was telling me that I wasn't good enough. That my love, my effort, my commitment, none of it measured up to whatever standard her friends had convinced her to hold me to. And instead of scrambling to prove her wrong, instead of begging her to reconsider or trying to justify my choices, I chose to believe what she was telling me and leave. That calm exit, that refusal to engage in the drama she and her friends had orchestrated, preserved something in me that arguing never would have. It reminded me that my value isn't determined by someone else's opinion. It never was. My worth isn't tied to the carat weight of a diamond or the approval of people who measure relationships by Instagram standards. Sometimes silence hits harder than shouting. When someone tests your worth, the best answer is to walk away, not to prove them wrong, but to remind yourself you were never the problem. I don't know where Vanessa is now. I don't check her social media. I don't ask mutual friends about her. I've moved on in every sense of the word. But I do know this. I'm better off. I'm happier. I'm more confident. I'm surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for what I can provide or how impressive I look on paper. And I didn't have to raise my voice, make a scene, or compromise my dignity to get here. I just had to know when to walk away.